Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome back to another episode of Under the Pomegranate Tree. Myself and Maulana Emad are joined today by a guest of ours, mashallah, Sheikh Akbar al-Haq Sahab. Assalamu alaikum wa
Walaikum
rahmatullah.
salam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum Hazrat.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Barakatuh.
Sheikh, how you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, mashallah. Nice to see you, man.
It's always nice to see you, mashallah.
Thank you very much.
The Noor,
You guys,
Noor Academy brings out the Noor.
Alhamdulillah,
Mashallah. Noorun
Alhamdulillah,
ala noor.
Alhamdulillah. It's got nothing to do with the extra lights that we have on today. Sheikh, it was nice to catch up with you earlier as well after Jummah.
Mashallah.
Have you guys been teaching together for some time here at Darul Ilm?
We've been together, mashallah, teaching in Darul Ilm since I think
2016.
2016.
Subhanallah.
So I've been here since 2013, Darul Ilm. And then
I've
Maulana
joined-
joined 3 years later.
Yeah, you mentioned you were here right at the beginning in the inception, innit? And you even said that you've been here longer than Mufti Saab because you taught the first class,
Yeah, that's-
mashallah.
That's a story I like to tell everyone that I've actually been here longer than Mufti Saab. There is some half truth in there.
No, it's true. You taught the first class.
So
Do you get me?
the way it worked is when Mufti Saab started the on-site Darul Ilm, he was contracted to another madrasa. He was still teaching, and then so he had to do the full year. And on site there was like two ustads that we had on site in the mornings. So Mufti Saab still did teach in the evenings, but in terms of the morning, Mufti Saab wasn't here as much.
Mashallah. And
But
Sheikh, when did you
he
start?
did keep up to date.
Started 2016, 3 years after.
Okay,
After
mashallah.
graduation, few months after.
Oh yeah, you graduated in 2015.
15 July.
And
After that.
mashallah, mashallah. Sheikh, you've recently started a new role as well somewhere, and tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've recently started working with students in a different field, something to do with like SEN students, so supporting SEN students, students with special education needs.
Mashallah.
So it's a new role. It comes with new challenges, and with all new roles and new challenges, there's always something to learn.
Of course, man. Of course, alhamdulillah. I mean, I have a lot of respect for people who work with SEN children because not everyone can do it, right? It's a challenging role. It comes with its own obstacles and challenges, and I remember because I've been, alhamdulillah, I had some experience working with them. I've worked with them for a number of years. When I first started SEN, right, at this local school, there was 15 of us who started on the same day, right? And only 5 of us made it to the end of the day. 10 people just ended up walking out, right? They just said, you know what, this is not for us. We can't do it, right? They've seen the students and their various needs and stuff like that, and they just couldn't hack it. So predominantly, what type of students do you work with then? So what type of diagnosis is it?
So the students I'm working with, so mine is more based one-to-one. I've got 3 students that I work with throughout the day, and two of the students that I'm working with are non-verbal. So you can't have a full conversation with them. They don't have the level of understanding of having a conversation. So they tend to kind of say phrases. And I've got one student who communicates in a way through his all previous conversation. So he'll replay back 2 sides or both sides of the conversation, trying to express what's inside of him. So it's, like I said, it's a learning curve for me. I'm learning a lot from this. There's a lot I didn't know about how the different levels that people can have of needs, the special needs. So sometimes you might think special needs is someone who just can't focus, somebody who can't concentrate, somebody who can't sit in a class environment. But there's so much more, and it's so much vast, and it's way bigger than that.
And it's an area that's always changing and evolving as well because new studies are coming out, new diagnoses are being made. Because I remember back in the days, hardly anyone got diagnosed with autism, right? It was just like I mean, we spoke about this in our previous
We did.
podcast as well, that there's hardly any words that describe like autism or things like that in our own languages, right? Number one, right? Like, what's the word for autism in Bengali?
Maulana will probably be able
I
to.
don't know. I don't know. I
No?
told him that
It's
last time.
difficult. It's difficult to find
It's
stuff like that,
tricky.
in our own people, and we'll touch on, whatever, like people from the Asian subcontinent, like it's a bit of a taboo when people talk about it. But we don't, in other languages, we don't have the words to describe these types of diagnoses like autism or Asperger's, Down syndrome. You know, somebody who's non-verbal, they probably just say, "Ye sada hai, nalaik hai," or this, that, and the other, or bimar hai, things like that. But there's no like technical terminologies or positive terminologies to do it.
Yeah,
But
I think
even, yeah,
you've touched upon that point. There's no positive terminologies.
yeah,
A lot of even some of the words you just mentioned, show a kind of a negative, a negative connotation to it.
yeah,
So
exactly.
already when we're just referring to them, it seems as if we're referring to them as a secondary standard, in the sense that they're not like normal people. They're like other than normal people, which already takes them on a lower level. And
Yeah.
this is obviously discrimination. I
Of
mean,
course,
should be
a hundred
avoided,
percent,
obviously.
100%.
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make is there's people now who are in their 30s and 40s who are getting diagnosed with autism now at this age.
Subhanallah.
So it wasn't picked up on when they were in school. So I was just wondering that, imagine the challenges that they must have faced going into school, knowing that, they had this sort of neurological disadvantage, you probably call it, in a sense that everybody else was on one level and they needed a different approach, but they weren't getting that level of support that they needed. And, maybe throughout their whole lives, they felt at a disadvantage. Maybe at their whole lives, they didn't feel at par with everybody else. But now the doctors are got the means to test them and to assess them, and they're saying, well, you've got autism. I know somebody who's 45 now, and they just recently got diagnosed with autism, right? And they said, if I'd have known that this was my situation when I was in school, maybe I would have got, less hassle from my parents. Maybe I would have got less hassle from my teachers. They were always trying to push me, push me, push me, but I was always at a disadvantage. They just never picked up onto it.
I think one of the points that you've made was of uh, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was less common. And I had this question, and I've posed it to different professionals of this. So I even proposed this question to the SENCO, that why is it that 20 years ago we didn't have that? So when we were in school, hardly anyone was diagnosed with autism. I don't think I could remember anyone in my class from school being diagnosed with any type of autism. And the response I got was there's many reasons. Sometimes the reason is because there was less knowledge about it, less facilities about it. And also another reason is, why are we having more people with autism in nowadays? I think that's another question we're gonna have to delve into.
Yeah, we'll look at that a little bit later on, because you're right, it is getting a lot more common now. It is getting a lot more common now. We're hearing it a lot more. Maybe it is because of the fact that there's a lot more awareness now. People are picking up onto the traits. People are picking up onto the signs, or some of the indicators, we can call it. Sheikh, have you got any experience working with SEN kids?
I never worked like Maulana's doing it, but I've had people like that in class before. My old masjid where I was before, we still have one student. Every 5 minutes or so, he'll start screaming and shouting. There's no way of controlling him until he calms down himself. His father didn't know how to deal with it. So when I spoke to him how to deal with him, because I wanted to know as a teacher, he said, I just shout at him. Now, I feel sorry for the poor kid because it doesn't work. So he doesn't know how to control himself. He just shouts. So suddenly he'll get up, he'll shout, run around the mosque, and then come back after that when he calms down. His brother, younger brother, had a similar issue, but he was more mild, so he could control himself. He would actually learn. The younger brother was very sharp. Mazuri is there, but he was very sharp. when I understood how to teach him, anytime I gave him any sabak, he would pick up and learn very quickly compared to other students.
mashallah.
But bichara was a bit mazur.
Yeah, because they have their strong points, right? And then they have areas where they need that a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
level of support. Like
So
I've worked with kids like, they couldn't spell their own name,
Mm.
right? But you put them in front of a keyboard, right? They were like, you know, playing all these songs and everything on the keyboard. Like there's certain things that they're going to be really, really good at, and there's certain things. I want to touch base on this, Sheikh. So please put a pin in that, right, about SEN kids inside madrasa, yeah.
Okay.
But just before I move over onto another question I want to ask Sheikh, when this child came into your class, right? Were you told that he's got a diagnosis?
No.
Were you given any training to like deal with him or anything?
So this problem, I actually raised the question with the mosque where I was. That's not just the only one. There was another mother. I was teaching her son. She came to me saying, Saji, I have another son who's autistic. I would like him to be here because my son likes you here. He was studying under me, and I would like you to teach him as well. I said, we don't have the facilities for it, and nor do I have the time because I have a whole class. Because with them, my experience is he's dealing with it now is that unless you give them full attention,
Yeah.
you're going nowhere. So when I spoke to her, she was very sad, like mosque, they should facilitate for these type of children. Then I told them about Darul, that we have a madrasa there, and they have a facilities for that if you want to take your son. Her complaint was, if I take him, I have to take my other son, and I don't want to take my other son because he's enjoying it here. So in the end, she decided to, keep him home. The other son, they didn't take him here. I don't think she brought him here. And the first one I mentioned to you, same advice I gave to the father as well. They take him to Darul Ilm because there are facilities. But his problem was he's at work and his mother can't take him there. And the problem with the mother was that she was a bit autistic herself. I met her.
Yeah.
So from there, kind of like 2 and 2 put together where it came from. But yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Mashallah. Mashallah. So we've obviously identified there that there is a gap,
There is.
especially when it comes to masjids and maktabs, catering for, this community of ours. Sheikh, what inspired you to even go down this road and work in this field? Because as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not for everybody, and not a lot of people can hack it.
yeah, like I said, it was when I started, it was completely new to me. So I haven't had that official training, but I've had that experience now,
Yeah.
and I've not been there for long. It's only been a couple of months or so, not as long as yourself. So you're better qualified and better equipped to deal with it, and I could learn so much from you. But I think, like you said, it's not for everyone. And before I was starting this role, I was having conversations with certain people, and they were like, "No, this is your role. This is good for you. You'll do well in this role." And I didn't believe in myself because I thought, no, I don't. I'm not sure if I could handle this. I don't know what they're going to be like and how it's going to be. But I think the first couple of weeks was hard, seeing things that I've never experienced, having to deal with certain characteristics that you've never experienced. Like, fortunately, because they don't have the understanding, they do lash out.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll get hit, sometimes you might get spat on, you'll definitely get verbal abuse from them. But as someone who works with them, you can never take that personally.
Yeah.
The moment you take it personally, you've lost that child.
Of
So
course.
you need to keep it formal, you have to keep it professional, and you have to remember that they don't know any better. And you have to realize why, rather than questioning how dare he do that, question why did he do that?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
why is his response to me asking him something that? So maybe there's some trauma behind it. Maybe he's had an experience, or maybe he can't express himself. Because remember, communication. This is one of the biggest issues that the SEN people have, is communication. They can't communicate like you and I can. They can't express themselves through words. So sometimes their anger is expressed through physical violence. Sometimes it's by throwing things. Sometimes it's by other means.
Yeah, it may not necessarily be anger. It could just be their way of trying to tell you that there's an issue, that there's something wrong,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it's up to the support worker or the clinician or the teacher or the support staff to be able to pick up on these signs and find out, you know what I mean? That's why now it's really, really important that, you have to sit and observe that child as well. You get able to find out what are their needs, what are their triggers and certain things. I want to touch on, effective communication with them for a while, but listening to you talk is this. I asked you the question of why did you want to join it, and I remembered why I wanted to join SEN because I don't think personally it was something that I would have wanted to do initially if I knew what the role entailed because there's a lot of personal care involved with these children as well. So, I mean, I was a father already when I started working over there, and I never changed any of my own children's nappies, right? Before, and I was put in a situation where I had to change other people's kids' nappies and stuff, and that was a bit, challenging for me and initially. But what made me work in SEN was I had a niece, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her because she passed away at age 12. Now, she wasn't, she just had a physical impairment. So she had muscular dystrophy, and that basically means that your muscles are not strong enough to support your body, and you have a lot of muscular issues. But mentally, mashallah, she was fine. She was all there. She was mashallah very, very sharp. From all her siblings, she was probably the sharpest. Maybe because she had a disadvantage physically, her mind was a lot sharper than her
Yeah.
body and everybody
Sometimes
else's.
where they lack, they excel
Yeah,
in another
exactly.
place.
Like, for example, a blind person, their sense of touch is heightened, their sense of
Their
hearing
hearing,
is
their
heightened, and
memory
things
as
like
well.
exactly. So I think it was probably because of that. And mashallah, she was very sharp. But towards her later years, she would have to wear a mask, to help her breathe. Now, this oxygen mask was on her for quite some time, right? And it's getting a little bit emotional again, just thinking about it. I knew I was going to talk about it today, right? So I already spoke about it. I had my emotional outburst earlier on. But anyways, she, she was a gem, you know what I mean? But because she would wear this mask, if somebody was to see her, they would not know the child behind the mask,
Hmm.
right? They would just think she's disabled, she's at a disadvantage, she's got all these things wrong with her, right? She's got all these medication that she needs. And when they would come into the room, they will just say, Halima, kya haal hai? How are you? You okay? And then they wouldn't really like engage with
Engage
her,
with her in
right?
conversation.
Because they didn't realize how much she was actually capable of.
Hmm.
So they knew that all they saw was a disability. They did not see the child
They couldn't
behind the
look, yeah,
disability.
they couldn't look past the
They couldn't
disability.
look past it.
They didn't see a person behind that disability.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
Subhanallah.
and I don't blame those people, anybody coming, it's just natural, innit? If you're not exposed to it, if you don't have, that type of experience, what else are you gonna do? What else are you gonna say? So, if a child has a a a need, a special need, because people people don't call it a disability anymore, right? Because again, it's got that negative connotation to it.
Yeah,
They were born
exactly.
with it. That just because they have one disadvantage, that doesn't mean they're not going to be good in other areas. So I don't. Sometimes I use it, but I try not to use that phrase, disability. But let's just say now a
Yeah.
child, they just see the disability, right? But they don't see the child behind it. And you have to work with the child, you have to spend time with them, you have to engage with them, and then you realize that, they're a lot more than they have a personality.
They do, exactly.
Do you
You
know what I
see
mean?
some amazing qualities within them, and then you just stand back and you're amazed by thinking that, subhanallah, they've got there's a person behind this.
Yeah,
There's like you'd see your own, like you see your own family members, like you'd see your own nephews and niece,
yeah,
and the way you play with them. You have to see another child like that. Yes, they might have a disability or a need, like as you said, in something else, but they've got they've got characteristics as well. They've
Exactly.
got things that they can offer. And just coming back on that point, I remember watching some videos some time back that there's this brother, special education needs, and he can't converse, he can't think. But as soon as he recites Quran, his memory is so sharp, he could tell you the top of the page, then by page number, go back one page, go back one
Exactly,
page.
exactly. They you know, they're very sharp. They have their own personalities. Opening because before it starts to melt and that. So this is gonna be a talking and eating podcast.
The weird one.
Jazakallah Amin and Hafizah for grabbing this for us. Hafizah, do us a favor, just grab some tissues as well. I think there's some there, just out there behind you. Yeah. Guys, it's very humid up here today. We're in the top full floor of the madrasa. If you need some tissue, guys, I've got some over here. Yeah, it's very humid today, man, so don't mind us, okay? If you guys are chilling, you know, grab yourself a cup of tea, grab yourself an ice cream, you know, make your favorite cheese and toast, whatever it is that you do, inshallah, get yourself comfortable, inshallah. Bismillah. Fire, alhamdulillah. Again, we're not being sponsored by these guys either, you get me? So if you do want a sponsorship deal, inshallah, come hit us up, inshallah, no problem. We're looking for sponsorship. Well, we're not. We just had the idea in the last episode as well that, you know, once I got the pomegranate juice, I thought, you know what? Do you want some?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I thought, why not, man? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Every little helps, you know what I mean?
It does.
So yeah, it was that case of trying to get to know, you know, the child behind the disability. Now, a lot of people don't do that. They don't take the time out to get to know that kid. And when I initially got sent in from, I was doing some agency work at the time, right? So I was in between jobs and I was signed up with an agency, and the agency sent me there. And the first time they sent me there, I just walked through the corridors and I seen the PMLD children, and I seen the children in the wheelchairs, right? PMLD is physical and mental learning, again, disability, right? So they were children who are not mentally all there, you know, they got physical disability as well, and they're wheelchair bound. So as soon as I walked in there, I just started seeing my niece in every single one of these children, right? And I wanted to get to know them, you know, because I always felt that about, always, you know, people will talk about her, and I'm thinking, well, you never really knew her because you never really took the time out, you know, to get to know her. No, as again, I'm not knocking anyone, you understand, because they just didn't know. They didn't know. A lot of the time, people don't know how to behave in it around a person. People don't know how to engage with them. So, you know, there's a lack of training, lack of, you know, lack of education, lack of experiences. But that's what spurred me on to work there.
Sorry, just on that point, that people don't know how to behave around them. They don't know how to speak to them, how to deal with them. So once, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, one of the classmates. So I came to I took the child, the SEN child, and I came to the class and I asked, can anybody else come with this child so we could play in one of the rooms? And then two students came, and the way I was just observing, and then the way the other child was trying to get the SEN child to play, I thought to myself, subhanallah,
Yeah,
that look, they're not looking, these children don't look at another child like they're different to us, they're one of us.
yeah.
So they know how to deal with them. It's only when we grow up and then we start thinking, oh, they're not the same as us.
Didn't you want a ice cream, officer? Why not, man? Should have had it. But yeah, man, alhamdulillah. So, you know, now you mentioned that, you know, some of your kids, your students are non-verbal. If you can move on to like obviously communication now, what sort of strategies do you have in place, you know, in order to communicate with them?
So there's different ways we have to communicate, and there's different methods, and some of these things we won't even be aware of like you mentioned earlier today, the BSL,
Yeah.
which is British Sign Language. That's one. Another one is Makaton. So these are different ways of communicating with them. So what we usually do, we have this. It's like a now and next board.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have these pictures, and you'll have like something like a particular subject. So this is now, and next is we'll go to break, or we'll go to eat, or we'll go
So you
lunchtime.
have PEC symbols, right?
Yeah, so these symbols will be a way to communicate. So sometimes if you feel like the child is not understanding what you're saying, you could show him the pictures. And sometimes if you want the child to tell you something, you ask him, okay, show me how what do you want? So you'll have I want to, and then you'll have a picture of a toilet. I want to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
I want to picture of food. I want to eat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these are certain ways that maybe there may be parents who have got SEN children, but they're not like Maulana mentioned. They don't know how to deal with them.
No, they
And
are, and there's many of them are going to be watching the show because obviously, as Sheikh alluded to earlier, Darul in Birmingham has its own SEN maktab that runs Saturdays from 10 till 2, is it? Yeah, mashallah. So they come in at 10 o'clock and finish at 2, and the parents, mashallah, from SEN parents now, mashallah, they're willing to talk about it a bit more. They know that the support available. They're trying to get out there and do it. Back in the days, it was a bit difficult though. But yeah, they're going to be watching and they're going to be learning, and that's the point I want to make. So these symbols that you're doing and these PEC symbols that you're using in school, do you know if their families are using them at home?
so sometimes you get to talk to them because with the SEN children, you take them right to the door, and then you drop them off to their
Yeah.
parents. So sometimes you get to have that conversation with them, and sometimes they'll tell you, they'll give us ideas as well. So one of the students I'm working with is he's still toilet training or potty training. So what they gave us an idea is he won't go to the toilet by himself because he hasn't got that confidence to go by himself. But if you offer him something that, okay, if we give you this, will you go to the toilet? He'll take it and go at home. So
Yeah.
that's why his parents has told us. So now that this is something that we can now use, and maybe we have something that we use, and then parents can kind of take that, and there needs to be like that unified approach where the school or the educational institute is providing the same as what the parents are doing
Yeah,
at
it's
home.
got to be a uniformed approach, and no point in you introducing like communication strategies and communication methods. It needs to also be reinforced at home as well, and there needs to be a uniformed approach. Otherwise, the kid's gonna get confused. You're not gonna, if at home he has to shout and scream to get it, and in school he has to use a symbol,
Yeah.
or at home, he has to, pull somebody's shirt or something, and then in school he has to still use a symbol. It needs to be a uniform. Sheikh, you got through your ice cream pretty fast. Yeah, I mean, that's because you're not doing a lot of talking. Yeah.
I'll
What
leave
was
that to
it?
you. In
So this student that you had, how did you eventually then manage to teach them Qaida, or was it
we
Quran?
couldn't. So with his younger brother, I mentioned, I managed to teach him, and that's because me and him we had an understanding. He understood me, I understood him. Initially, it was difficult because that was the first time me teaching someone was a bit of autism. But once I understood him, it was okay. He was a very nice kid, learned without any problem. Also, he never gave me any trouble in class, even though I had a lot of students at that time in that masjid. At times, I would be covering alone, would be covering around 60 students, 60.
Subhanallah.
Yeah, so sometimes teacher didn't come, so I'm stuck with the whole mosque.
Allahu
So
Akbar.
normally I'd have 25 or so, but yeah,
And to think that maybe those students that were SEN, they may have been one-to-one in school,
yeah,
right? And then in Maktab, they're probably being lost. Their
yeah.
needs are probably being overlooked. You get me? Especially when you're having to teach, 60 kids?
I think,
Different age as well.
yeah.
But when I spoke to the
60
father,
mainstreams kids are going to be difficult.
yeah, so when I spoke to the father and told him about his older brother, the only advice we could give him is that we can't teach him here, because that's unfair on him. Because if he was alone, maybe we could find a way to deal with him, but with that many kids and with other students where he suddenly starts running and shouting, You know how maktab is, Maulana would know, you would know.
Yeah.
The one kid starts messing around and everyone gets distracted. And here you have someone running around screaming. Suddenly,
I just remember this time, yeah, I was teaching Maktab and as Asr Salah fell in Maktab, right? And one kid coughed in Salah, right? And then another kid coughed. And then all of a sudden, everyone just started coughing. You know what I mean?
that
Yeah, that happens
that
in
happens
Maktab.
with grown-ups. Like, have you seen in mosque? If Imam Sahib, Bachara's reading, so he coughs. Everyone's behind him coughing for no reason.
Yeah, but these kids, man, trust me, that day was terror. Everyone was just
Only
coughing, coughing. I couldn't help it, man. I started giggling in my namaz, you get me? I was like, yo. Yeah, so, mashallah, alhamdulillah, like I said, I rate you, you know what I mean, for doing the job that you're doing. Alhamdulillah, I did it for 7 years. I would have loved to have continued to do it, but it just, circumstances were such that I just wanted to start working from home, man. I saw a lot of people around me, they just started getting jobs working from home, so I just decided to take a bit of a career change. But I miss it, man. I miss those kids. And I swear, Dan, I miss some of those kids, man. Like I had this one student, right? Subhanallah. Even at home, right? His mom she was a single mother. She had only that one son, but she just couldn't handle him. He just became too big for her, right? And mashallah, he was a big lad, right? He was a good like 16, 17 stone, right? And he was such a wicked lad, like mashallah, you get me? Amazing, and not wicked in the sense that he was
Yeah.
wicked, but like he was such a good lad. But like you said, that you got that understanding with that kid. I just had this understanding with him. I just knew, I just got to know his personality. I knew how, he's actually kind of funny. You know what I mean? He had this sense of humor. Not many people got it, you get me? But I got that sense of humor. And even his mom was like, you're really good with him, you're amazing with him, can I just take you home? And I just look after him 24/7. But because, when he did have those outbursts, right, it was just too much for his mom to control. Eventually, this lad, he ended up going into care because, his mom just couldn't handle him anymore. She never had much of a support network and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the points that you both mentioned was to build that rapture between the two people, so between the adult and between the child or the teenager, whoever it is, that you build that understanding, and once you're able to build that understanding, then it's a lot easier to work with them. There's a lot you could achieve with them, and then you could progress. But until you do that, and that could take weeks, that could take sometimes it could take months, but try what you have to do is try to develop that relationship with them, and then you could kind of work on how you're going to progress them, whether it's through learning or whether it's trying to just socially get them up to date with everyone else. Then it's definitely important to have that relationship and that understanding, the mutual understanding between you.
100%, 100%. And I remember, yeah, when staying on the communication topic, right? I remember when I first started the school, they used to have something called Team Teach, right? I don't know whether you've heard of that. So Team Teach is when we would have to, let's just say that there was this kid and he was being irate, right? He was having, they used to call it, the kids at baseline, then there's a trigger, right? And then, there's an outburst, right? He's having, he's at what was the terminology that they used to use? He's irate now. He's having his outburst, right? And then you try to eventually what you need to do is you need to try to bring this student now back down to baseline, right? To de-escalate the situation, right? And we would have to physically restrain some of these children, right? And that's something I wasn't really comfortable with initially, having to physically restrain them, but everybody was doing it. No, it's fine, right? The school was actually training us how to do it. I remember we were all inside the hall, right? And they had this one, they would get one staff member and say, okay, we want you to like wave your arms around, we want to use force, this, that, and the other, and we want you to come and restrain them. So we would have to go in the shows how to put the arm locks in, right? How to get them down, how to sit on the chair with them, right? If they, try to get them seated, one staff member on one side physically restraining this child now. And these children, mashallah, they have a lot of power in them. They have a lot of strength,
They
right?
have a lot of strength.
I think there's one kid, right? It was a girl, yeah, and all day what she would do is she would just bounce around. Yeah, she couldn't sit still. She was constantly jumping around, running from one side of the classroom to the other side of the classroom all the time. And because we knew that that was her, that was just how she used to regulate
Mm.
herself, right? I might go off a bit off topic here, but like let's just say now somebody's on a roller coaster ride,
Mm.
right? And they get that adrenaline rush from being on a roller coaster. And then when they come off the roller coaster, right, they compose themselves. And what do they want to do? They want to get back onto the roller coaster again to get that adrenaline rush again.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, these students are the same. They want that, they love that feeling, that adrenaline. And the only way they can get it is by simulating a roller coaster or simulating, and I find out later on that this girl, she has a bouncy castle, a trampoline at home,
Mm.
right? And she just loves being on that trampoline. So all she used to do is just jump in the classroom, trying to emulate and trying to, simulate that that trampoline that she had at home. But it took a long time for me to realize what her need was. You understand why she was jumping around, why she was running around. And bro, when she went, right, and I'm gonna come back to this when she went off on one, right, for whatever reason it may have been, it would take two or three of us to try to restrain her, right? She was only a little girl, right? She couldn't have been taller than 4'2", 4'3", right? And it would take three men, you get me, to physically restrain her. And you know what? Just thinking back to that time when we would have to physically restrain somebody's kids, right? It was madness, right? We had this one kid, right? And he would, when we would try to physically restrain him, he would try headbutting us and everything. Like, it was really, really, I'd say the word, bad right now. But later on, we had a change of management, right?
Mm.
A new head teacher came in, and this new head teacher, he had a hands-off policy, right? He's like, there should be
So
no,
no grabbing, no
yeah, no
gripping.
restraining, no nothing. And to be fair, a lot of the staff, they found it difficult to move. Now, I didn't mind having this hands-off policy. Reason being was because every time there used to be a kickoff before, they used to be radioing me. You get me? Like, there's a couple of us who had radios with us, right? And we were like, even though we weren't, they had some guys who were like proper team teach trained, and they were like behavioral, they used to call them the behavior team, right? They would come in when the kid was kicking off. But because I had that, level of physicality about me that I didn't mind, getting stuck in, holding them, restraining them, and I was able to do it in a way that I never got harmed, and neither did the child get harmed. Somebody they've got their arms flying everywhere, and there's
Yeah.
somebody, they don't have that strength about them. They could either hurt themselves, and a lot of staff did. I'll be honest with you, like they got hurt. They were going off, for months and end with backache and this, that, and the other. And because they know that, Atiki, he's not made out of glass, he ain't gonna break. We'll send him in. So a lot of the time I used to keep this radio with me, right? And they would radio me and say, listen, can you go to such and such classroom, right? And help out with this kid. So when this hands-off policy came in, I was glad on it. Take your radio, you get me, right? Nowadays, now you've all got to deal with it yourselves, you know what I
Mm.
mean? In a non-physical manner. But this head teacher of ours said something, right? And it's quite profound, right? And I say this all the time, and I mentioned this to you earlier. We're not dealing with naughty kids. We're dealing with children who are trying to communicate their needs, right?
That is so profound.
Subhanallah,
Because once you understand that, that's halfway to understanding that child now.
exactly. So there would be like, an innumerable amount of, restraints, taking place on a daily basis in this school, right? And overnight, everything just changed. we started working on communication strategies. He brought in behavioral therapists, right, that would sit there and observe a child and say, okay, these are the triggers, this is what it is. He brought in communication therapists as well, people who were like they knew BSL, they knew Makaton, but properly. They were able to effectively communicate using PEC symbols. So they were brought in strategies that, okay, this student, he's able to use, he's able to communicate verbally, so let's bring in some sort of verbal coaches, right, to help him or help them learn to vocalize and talk. Okay, this student is non-verbal, let's teach, and they're able to pick up Makaton, so let's teach them Makaton, right? Let's teach all the staff Makaton as well. Bro, when I first started the school, they never taught us Makaton. They taught us team teach. Our first point of contact was to physically restrain the child. Now we've got a new head teacher who's coming in saying, no, you gotta, effectively communicate. My name is Ateiq. Do you know what I mean? Things like that. Where are you going? Things like that. To try to communicate with them. Uh, uh, do you want help? Do you want me to help you? Right? So, okay, great. We've got that. Let's teach this kid this strategy now. Let's teach him how to, communicate effectively. Okay, they can't do Makaton. Okay, let's introduce PECs, right? Those symbols now and next. Okay, so work now, right? We're gonna. I think this is finish. Work. What's work again? So it has been a long time since I've done it. Since I've done Makaton. Okay, so we're gonna work now, right? Work now, and then dinner later. You know what I mean? But then if they are unable to do that, put the PEC symbols in. You got
The
a dinner.
pictures, yeah.
They got the picture there so they can see. Okay, toilet here, dinner here, knife and fork. For dinner. But have it universal. Then make sure that the parents and the families are using these as well. And bruv, overnight, right? It almost went to like, let's just say we were dealing with like 20 instances a day. We were dealing like with one or two, right? And then after about a couple of months, we would go for months without having to physically restrain the child. And to think that we were doing at least 20 to 30 physical restraints a day, right, before that, and just bringing in some communication strategies and effective communications like Makaton, like BSL, like PECs, right? We just reduced it. So this kid now who was telling you, right, who the headbutt and everything, right? Him, bro, nobody wanted to work with him because he was that violent before. And the moment we stopped physically restraining him and gave him the means to effectively communicate, he would walk around with a textbook, right? So if he wanted a biscuit, he would just say, he'd grab the biscuit symbol and come and bring it to you. I want a biscuit, right? Before, all he wanted was that same biscuit, but there was 3 or 4 men physically restraining him. But he wasn't able to communicate that he wants a biscuit. And just now, all he has to do is say, I want a biscuit. He had this thing with scissors, right? He would like to get scissors and he would like to cut things up, right? Like, just like normal, he wouldn't harm himself or wouldn't cut, the tables or the chairs or, we'll give him paper and he would just love to cut out these pictures and stick them, right? So he would be obsessed with the scissors and he would be obsessed with paper and also the Pritt stick, the glue sticks, right? And only thing he would ask for ever since this we gave him this PEX book, right? He would just come, I want scissors. All right, okay, my glue stick is dried up. I need a new glue stick. So he'll come and give you a glue stick and we'll say, you know what, you've got a glue stick there, right? And then he'll give it to you again. And then we're like, okay, so there's obviously something wrong with that glue stick, right? So we go check it. Yeah, it's all dried out. It's not sticking. Before it'd be a case of, oh, you've got one, just go and check the glue stick, you know what I mean? Subhanallah, man. I just thinking back now, it's all coming back to me, I'm like, we used to be like physically restraining kids and when there was no need. There was absolutely no need to do that. We just needed to give them the effective communication.
And that's the difference knowledge makes.
Yeah.
Having the knowledge, the know-how, how to deal with certain situations, incidents. If you know how to deal with it effectively, like you said, effective communication. If you know how to do it effectively, you can make drastic changes. And I think if we want to bring this point in, we like Maulana mentioned that we've got students now coming to our maktabs,
Yeah.
coming to our madrasas, coming to our masjids with these same needs. Like you said, some in school they've got one-to-one support, but in maktab you've got one teacher to 15 students, one teacher to 20 students, and one of them or two of them may have some extra needs, and we can't cater for them.
It's not one or two anymore. It's a lot more than that now. You know what I mean? Like a lot of kids are getting
Yeah,
diagnosed with ADHD and autism.
Autism.
They're sitting somewhere on the spectrum,
yeah.
right? And
And a lot
parents
of the
don't like to
times
admit it.
they might not be diagnosed,
Yeah,
but because doctors are very careful,
yeah,
the professionals are very careful in diagnosing anyone, but then they say ADHD tendencies, autism tendencies. So they're on, like you said, they're on borderline, and sometimes it takes years for them to be diagnosed. But those years go past. What are the facilities that they have to attend in terms of what Islamic knowledge is out there for them?
definitely. I mean, you mentioned now there's kids now who come to maktab and whatnot, but how many of the staff members in that maktab are, SEN trained? How many of them have been, trained in communication or in managing, behavior management or anything like that? Very, very few, if not any.
If any, if any.
Yeah.
And this is why I say, and I've mentioned it before, that for maktabs and masjids to take in SEN children that they know of, and they know it's not somewhere lower on the spectrum but higher on the spectrum, you're doing a disservice to these children. You're doing a disservice to the parents. And parents also have to realize that if the masjid doesn't have the facilities, we need to find somewhere where there is facilities, because you as a parent are taking the right away from your child. You're doing a disservice to your child.
Exactly. I mean, don't
So,
just think about the feast, you know what I mean?
and I think, Maulana, this is one of the reasons why I approached you about this topic, because my main concern was I wanted to raise awareness, and mashallah, your podcast is reaching far and wide, and we need to raise this awareness that we have to, as parents, realize if there's any problems, any needs that our children have, and then we have to be able to try to cater for them in the best way. And another awareness as a community, maybe from the masjids or the educational institutes, we need to try and provide this facility. And Alhamdulillah, Darul Ilm, always at the forefront of these kind of things, have got one. I mean, apart from Darul Ilm, in Birmingham, how many do
I
you
don't
know?
know any. I don't
No
know any.
Maulana?
maktabs. No, I don't know.
No.
Yeah, I
So
think
What?
either we have a specialist place for the where these children can come and learn, or maybe get some training in, or something we spoke about earlier today, that maybe masjids need this training.
they
we
do.
we have safeguarding training, child protection policy, and so many other trainings in our maktabs. But what about SEND training? This is
Yes.
something it should be looked at
So I brought
within
it
the
up in my
maktab.
last maktab over there in the sense that I said, look, from what I have observed, I haven't been into every classroom, but from what I observed, you got at least 5 children now who's sitting somewhere on the spectrum, right? What do you have in place for them? What type of, have the teachers been made aware of it? They go, now, the parents filled out the application form, right? And they never told us, but there's nothing on your application form for them to take to say this person has
Exactly.
got it. So we need to obviously start introducing that in, right? Then we also need to start, because if a child has been diagnosed, they're going to have an EHCP, which
Exactly.
is an educational healthcare plan. They need to bring that to the madrasa as well to say, okay, what type of support is this child getting in school? How can we sort of mirror that also as well? So there's a uniformed approach, not only in the home, in the school, but now also in the maktab and in the masjid
Exactly.
as well. We need to be involved with
So
that.
everybody's on the same level. Everybody's
Yeah.
on the same wavelength.
So I had this
That
one
when
kid,
we
yeah.
when we're approaching this child in the EHCP plan, you'll come up with certain things that they like, the things that help them to learn, and they prefer those kind of things. So when you read that and when you look into the different ways, then you could set targets accordingly. If you've got an SEN child and you're setting him a target as a mainstream child, then you've already put him at a disadvantage. So these EHCP plans are personal to that one child. So maybe the maktab has to look at this EHCP plan and see, okay, this is how much he's learning in school. So in maktab, this is how much we expect him to learn. That's his target. It will be lower than a mainstream child, but then at least you think you know that he's getting somewhere, rather than sending him out to the class or putting him next to you and say, "Just get on with your reading, get on with your reading," when he can't concentrate, he can't focus.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few of them. So there was a kid who had, he was 100% he had, ADHD tendencies, and this teacher just did not know how to manage him, and he was always standing outside in the corridor. Every time I walk past, I say, "What are you outside for?" And he goes, "Oh, I was talking, I was messing about." But really, the teacher now, this is negative reinforcement, right? With a lot of these kids, you need positive reinforcement. You need to reinforce positive attitude inside of them. By you just sending the kid out, this is negative reinforcement. What you're doing then is you're just saying you're giving this kid an opportune moment now just to get out of studies. He can study. He is able to, providing that the environment that he's in is conducive for him
Exactly.
to study. It's tailored for him. But if he's in an environment there's loads of background noises, things like that, he can't concentrate anyways. And if he can't concentrate on the studies because the environment is not conducive for him, he's obviously going to play up. He's going to start distracting other people. He's going to start messing about, looking for other things. And I said to the teacher, I said, "Listen, you can't just keep sending him out." He goes, "He's disturbing everybody," right? I says, "Well, look, he was in my class year last year. He was fine, right?" And I go, "Did you once come and ask me what I used to do for him? Or did you even come out your way and just say, okay, listen, he's messing about. I noticed that you never used to send him to the office. You never used to send him outside the classroom, right? What was it that you've done?" And I go, "You need to be a bit more proactive." I go, "If you're a teacher now, I go, you have an amana. You are now responsible for this child." Right? I go, "I was waiting for you to approach me, but I go, I don't think that day's ever going to come where you're going to approach me and ask me, whether it's through pride, arrogance, whatever, right? Maybe because I'm younger than you, you've been teaching a lot longer than me." But it says I had certain things in place for him. Even the madrasa management, they didn't know, because they would have just kept that child with me, then knowing that, okay, he's got an understanding with him, he's able to teach him. It's all right, let him stay in his year. But no, even they would know he has to move over onto the next class, right? I said, all right, fair enough. I thought, let me just see what's going to happen. I ended up speaking to that child's dad again, and I said, "Listen, I don't think this is the right place for your son. Right, you need to find somewhere else for him." I would love to take him on, but unfortunately, they've said that he can't remain in my class because of his age, etc. And you need to do something else. He goes, "Why did the madrasa told me?" I says, "I don't know." I said, "I don't know why they haven't approached you, but I've noticed, right, you'll get a lot more. You need to send him somewhere, either get somebody to come out to him, teach him in the house, or do some one-to-one lessons for him, or find a masjid." I wasn't aware of Darul Ilm at the time, otherwise I would have sent him over here. But Sheikh, look, Alhamdulillah, I think we've covered quite a few things. There was a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, which was like, Asian families and not talking about it. It's almost as though that they want to mask it, that my son's fine, my daughter, there's nothing wrong with her, right? She's totally fine, right? Maybe because they don't want them to get that special attention. Maybe they think that they might. Because I spoke to a mother once. I says, "Why is it that you never told us that your son has special needs? Why didn't you tell us that he's autistic?" She goes, "Because I just thought maybe in the future nobody's gonna want to marry him." Do you know what I mean? And I says, "Look, I go, people can learn to live with their autism, providing that they get the diagnosis early in life, they get the right support. There's behavior management techniques that, you can bring him down. He's not always going to be like this. He's not always going to be, hyper like this. Through age and through behavior management, I go, he can, be integrated into society,
Yeah.
being,
Through the
integrated
right
into the
support and
community and stuff like
environment,
that."
that will help.
When I was working inside the school as well, I noticed people that were coming in. They were from my own community, and I did not know that they had special needs children. And I says, "Well, how come you've never brought him to the masjid?" "Oh, I don't know what people are gonna think." I says, "Boo, what people think? Oh, he's gonna break something. I'll let him break something. Bring him in. Once he's gonna come once, he's gonna break a window once. Okay, we'll fix it. He'll break it twice, he'll fix it. It's up to us now to bring some behavior management techniques into play so then he won't. I go, you're going to keep him away from the masjid his entire life now. Right? I go, how come I don't see him out shopping with you on Lady Road? I go, I see you with your other kids. How come, he or she's not with you? Oh, because, it is hard work. I said, listen, it is hard work now, but you got to put in the hard work. You got to take that.
You have
And
to,
then
because
eventually they'll learn to cope.
then because that will also fall in under neglect. You're
Exactly.
depriving that child from without any fault of their own. And when you do that, you're upsetting that child. Imagine that the child, how he will feel that, okay, my elder brothers get to go, my sister gets to go with my parents, but why don't I get to go? What have I done? He might not be able to communicate that with you,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean he doesn't have feelings.
exactly,
So
man.
yes, it is difficult. Yes, they will play up, but like you said, we have to learn these behavior management strategies. You have to go out and learn. If you don't know something, then you need first. What's the ayah? No. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So ask the people of knowledge or remembrance who know how to deal with it. So it's not just enough that, okay, we can't deal with this, let's just keep them in the house. How long are you going to keep them locked up for? How long are you going to keep them away from society? And the more you keep them away, the more you deny them or deprive them of this education that is out there, the worse it'll become, because the further they'll fall back. So once they've got the right environment, the right education, the right support, these things, as you mentioned, not everyone, some people will have different levels, but there are certain people with needs that can come back to a normal or closer to normal living standards.
This is why, I'm just amazed with Mufti Tawseed Mir, you know what I mean? He has this vision, he's a pioneer of his age in the sense that, even before I got here, like he already had the SEN Maktab, right, already running. He already had people who was, trained, working here with them. He has the Al Ishara going off as well for the deaf community, sign language and things like that. You know, just a couple of months ago was it? I mean, where he done the seminar, just strictly for deaf people. Imagine now there's a deaf person walks into a masjid, they have a question on tahara, right? And they won't, how are they going to communicate to the Imam Sahib inside the masjid, right? That I have
Exactly.
this type of question. At least now, Alhamdulillah, there's a place where they can come. Sheikh, any final things before because there's a couple of things I want to address with our viewers, but if there's anything that you want to say, inshallah.
Um, I kind of wanted to touch on some of the contributing factors
Yeah.
to this. What affects children? Why is it more common now? I mean, it's not concrete that it's one particular thing,
Yeah.
but it's a whole host of things.
I know. It's on my list as well, about processed foods and screen times and things like this, but it's Maghrib time now, right?
Yeah,
And I'm thinking, inshallah, what we'll do is we'll pick this up in another episode. Maybe we'll
inshallah.
we'll sit down again, we'll do a part two to this, because what I want to do is I want to give the viewers an opportunity to ask questions, right? Because I know there's many parents out there that have children with special education needs. I want them to come in now, start asking some questions, put it in the comment sections, inshallah, and then we can elaborate on the contributing factors, right? As well as maybe answering some
Some of
questions
these
of the
questions,
parents
yeah.
as well, inshallah. Sheikh, anything that you want to add, inshallah, before?
Well, the points I would take from this the conversation we had is the maktabs. Maktabs, we need to facilitate for these people. Because so far I've been in multiple maktabs. The one issue we face is that they come in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. After that, because in a class environment with a lot of other students, they can't manage. So end result is they end up leaving. We don't know where they go. We don't know whether they're studying, as the Maulana said, they're mahroom and they're deprived. And that's sad. So Birmingham, this is the only place I know. You said the same thing. You said the same thing. I don't think any other place offer this.
No, I think other people are taking on students on a discretionary basis, right? Like one here, two here, you know what I mean? Again, I don't know whether they've got the full training, and me and Sheikh are going to try to work on something now
Taking on is
moving
one
forward. But
thing. Taking on is one thing, but do you have teachers, as you said,
yeah,
to teach these children?
exactly.
In maktabs, we don't,
We
unfortunately,
need
we
to
don't.
raise awareness. I
So
mean, it's difficult
the
getting.
awareness is that we need to have the training for the
Maktabs,
maktabs, and maybe a special facility
Or a
that
Senko
this is,
officer. Have at least
yeah,
one Senko officer per
yeah,
maktab, you know what I
or
mean? You have a
one class
safeguarding
which
officer.
is, yeah, yeah, exactly, or a class which is for those type of children.
So,
But
Yeah.
they also need other facilities. It's not just enough, okay, you got a class of 6. They need different resources. They can't have the same resources as mainstream. They need sand, they need
I mean, look now.
play-doh, they need
Yeah,
water, different ways that they learn.
100%. Like it was humid up here, yeah.
yeah.
So Alhamdulillah, now we cool because I managed to take the initiative and order some ice creams and stuff, right? We managed to regulate it. A young child won't be able to do that. If he's hot in his classroom, if he's bothered, he won't be able to communicate that to his teacher, right? Effectively, he can't just turn around and say, okay, no, can I get an ice cream? I'm feeling hot. He doesn't even know himself, or she doesn't know herself how to regulate it. The staff member needs to be trained to be able to pick up on these sort of triggers. Say,
Exactly.
are you feeling okay? Do you want to remove your coat? You hear me? Do you want to go for a little walk or something? You know what I mean? Can I get you some water? We need to be able to pick up onto these telltale signs and these triggers and things like that. So yeah, I think training is really, really important.
One more point, and this is going to be a rant. Maulana done a whole podcast on it. That we see within Birmingham, we got masajids, right? The huge masajid, and they're expanding and trying to make it more larger. God knows why, but they're doing it. But they can't spend pennies on this to make a facility for these type of students who are poor people. They're deprived.
We'll,
I don't
we'll, we'll
understand
raise
what.
50,000 for a minaret,
Yeah, exactly.
but then we won't raise for a service.
Definitely,
So
definitely. Look,
we're more looking into bricks and mortar, or building buildings and whatever facilities to be used on Eid Day and Jummah.
Masajid,
Whereas, yeah, whereas we can't maybe get £50,000, get someone who's properly qualified in something like this, and then offer that service.
you know what, it's a shame, but I honestly think that we're a long way away from that. We can't even get masjids nowadays to hire a youth worker for their youth, and I think Senko's still way down the pecking order to get that. And as you mentioned, we can buy like a 50 minarets, and we can buy nice chandeliers and nice ornaments and stuff to put inside the masjid. We can't even pay our imams decent wages and stuff nowadays. But look,
Another part two.
We're
another
waiting on
part
that
two.
part two with you and Sheikh Zahir. I don't know when that's going to happen, right? Trying to get you guys here is a mission. But Jazakallah for your time today. Thank you for coming down. It was a much needed topic. We're definitely going to do a part 2 of this because there's so many things that we haven't even touched on. But guys, I want to give the viewers now an opportunity, inshallah. Please, if you do have children or you know anybody who SEN, you have any queries, things like that, maybe you have a case study, maybe you have some advice that you would like to share with us, please do pop it in the chat section. We're going to put our details in there as well. You can phone us in you can phone us in at the madrasa as well, inshallah. One of our counselors or trained members of staff will be able to help you and support you. If you have a child with special education and needs, and you feel as though that they would be they will thrive in an environment that we here at Darul Ilm have created. We have an SEN maktab that runs every Saturdays between 10 and 2. Please do hit us up, and inshallah bring them down. Pick up the phone, call us. And also, if you feel as though you're lacking any type of support, right, I run a counseling session here at Darul Ilm every Tuesdays and Thursdays between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. inshallah. Our numbers are going to be in the description below. Please do contact us. I'll be very eager to speak to you and hear from you. And is there anything that we can do, any sort of advice that we can give, even if there's some sort of professionals that we can put you in contact with, inshallah, we will do our utmost to support you guys, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair for watching. Please do stay tuned because we are going to pick this conversation up later on, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.